Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. The electric grid is an interconnected network of wires which is used to deliver electricity from suppliers to consumers. It consists of generating stations that produce electrical power, high voltage transmission lines that carry power from distant sources to urbanized areas, and distribution lines that connect individual customers. A smart grid is a modernized electrical grid that merges the power grid with the communications network to support the real-time exchange of information in an automated fashion to prevent electrical system failure and improve distribution. One important element of the smart grid is replacing electromechanical switches with semiconductor-based controllers that can reroute large power flows much faster. Another element of the smart grid is a billing structure which permits energy pricing to vary moment to moment with market conditions. Our guest today is Richard J. Mark, President and CEO of Ameren Illinois. He has held that position since June of 2012. His company recognizes the need for utility infrastructure improvement and will invest $3.5 billion over the next 5 years to its electric grid and natural gas network. Richard Mark, welcome to Conversation.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations the last time, and you've been a regular guest here over the years. We're almost up to 13 years now. And last time we had you, though, you were still with Ameren, Missouri.
Correct, yes.
Which you were doing
I was
customer service?
Well, I was over all customer operations, which included electric and gas distribution for the state of Missouri.
And then they gave you this big promotion, and now you're over in Illinois, being the president and CEO.
Correct.
What's a president and CEO do?
Well, you know, it's challenging. I mean, we're in challenging times. The industry's changing. The utility industry's changing dramatically. So it's staying on top of the changes. It's meeting the needs of the customers. It's managing through the regulatory changes that are coming about, whether it's through the Illinois Commerce Commission or the EPA. Making sure that your company stays on top of that while at the same time responding by providing customers with safe and reliable power.
Who generates these regulations? And I don't mean by name, but you know, what is it, the industry that generates regulations so that everybody better operates in a better environment? Or is it others that are imposing regulations upon you, making your life more difficult?
Well, you have several levels of regulations. You have first the state level. Those regulations are decided by the Illinois Commerce Commission. The Illinois Commerce Commission has 5 commissioners. They're appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate. And they basically set the regulations for the state of Illinois for utilities. And then each state has a similar type of structure, has a commission that sets the utilities. Then also you have a federal, regulatory commission that also provides some regulation for such things as transmission, that is a multi-value type project that serves customers outside of your service territory. And then depending on what other types of programs or services your company offers, there could be like the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, there could be other types of generation type of organizations, the EPA, that will set regulations. So there's a number of different state and federal agencies, as well as sometimes local governments, that set regulations that we must adhere to.
Does Ameren Illinois find these regulations helpful or hurtful?
Well, some are helpful and some are hurtful. Some of the regulations are very much needed to make sure that all the utilities are operating in a safe and effective manner to keep the rates as low as possible for our customers. But some of them are drafted that basically cause some conflict as far as trying to operate a business. Ameren, for example, is a Fortune 500 company where we have shareholders. It's important that we do earn a profit. And sometimes the regulations and the whole idea of having a regulated monopoly, people don't really understand what that means anymore. It came about in the early 1900s, of what a regulated monopoly is, and people kind of forget the regulated monopoly and they just say, oh, you're a monopoly. Well, monopolies are regulated in this country. And so you have rules and regulations that you must adhere to under those policies.
I mean, how many electric companies do they want operating within a given geographic area? Do they want power lines running parallel, or?
Well, if you look back to some of the old pictures with the, say, the World's Fair in 1904 in St. Louis, you know, you saw wires all over going on.
Exactly.
You might see a pole with 100 different wires on it. And that was due to the fact you had numerous utility companies at that time, phone companies, cable, not cable, but telegraph. You had the utility companies and electric companies. Mm-hmm. So they're all running the wires on the same poles, and it was just a mangled mess. Mm-hmm. And
I remember reading that some telephones were so screwed up that you could be living next to somebody, but you couldn't call them.
Right.
Because they weren't on the same system that you were on.
That's right. And so that's how regulated monopolies came about, you know, is to try to bring some order to that. And, you know, in today's world, trying to provide that infrastructure, just maintaining that infrastructure is a task. So in order for, you know, if you did not have a regulated monopoly and you just had companies trying to create that infrastructure, the cost of electric would be so high the average person probably couldn't afford it.
How often do you think in terms of 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now?
Quite regularly. I mean, you know, obviously running the business now is important, but we're embarking on a major construction rebuild of the infrastructure. We're a modernization plan for our electric grid. We're looking at building the infrastructure that that will be in place in 2050, and so we have to look ahead. We really don't know what type of electronics that the average home will have at that time. You know, trying to look and think about what are going to be the needs of the future, the homes of the future. There's so many different things that are going on, and technology's changing so fast that we actually are looking at, you know, what would the typical home needs be for the electric in 2050. So that's part of our planning process when we start looking at designing the new grid for the future.
I mentioned in the opening that you're doing a $3.5 billion infrastructure improvement over a 5-year period.
Right.
That's only like around 700-800 million a year times 5, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Right.
That doesn't seem like a whole lot of money.
Well,
is that what they let you do, or is that what you would like to do? Would you do more if you could?
Well, the way the legislation, there's legislation that basically enacted this modernization action plan in the state of Illinois, which allows us to make these investments and then recover our costs. Without that legislation, we probably would not be making that level of investment. Prior to this legislation, we were probably investing about $350 million a year. So this will double our capital investments going forward. Mm-hmm. On an annual basis, and it will give us a great opportunity to rebuild much of the electric infrastructure that we have today, which most of it was built in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So it is an aging infrastructure. It was built at a time, say in 1960, most homes were just getting air conditioning. Most homes maybe. That's right, because most homes did not even have central air until the 70s and 80s when it started becoming more and more popular. But in the 60s, when many of the substations were built, many of our new distribution systems were built, you know, most homes had one TV. Mm-hmm. Usually it was a black and white TV, especially in my home. Window
no microwave.
No microwave.
No computer.
That's right. Now, you know, you look at the average home has 4 TVs, a flat screen in every room. You have computers. You plug in your drill now to recharge it. So everything we have, you know, now our demands on the electric grid and even on the fuse box in your home has changed so dramatically. And we have to start planning ahead for what that change is going to be in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And that's challenging because, you know, we don't know what the Googles of the world or the Apple computers of the world are going to invent next. But we do know that we have to have an infrastructure that, number one, is reliable and it's robust enough to handle and be flexible enough to handle any of those new types of challenges.
Speak about the tension between traditional methodologies of generating electricity versus the new desire that there be cleaner energies.
Yeah, well, you know, traditionally in Illinois, you know, you had many, you have nuclear, Exelon and ComEd, they own approximately 11 nuclear power plants.
You guys aren't in the nuclear business.
Illinois does not own, we do not own any power plants in Illinois. In Illinois, for a distribution company like ours, Ameren Illinois, it's illegal to own generation. So Illinois in 1997 passed legislation to deregulate the utilities in the state.
I remember we had Jay Hoffman here talking about that then.
Okay. Okay.
No, it wasn't then. It was shortly after
Right.
that. But yes, I
And
remember.
so all the utilities had to divest themselves of the generation. So Ameren Illinois Company does not own any generation plants in the state. They're owned by either subsidiary companies or other companies that are unrelated to the utility business. But you know, in Illinois, we still have we either have nuclear, we have a number of coal-fired plants, and a number of natural gas plants that provide the power that generates for most customers in Illinois. And then they're separate, independent companies. They're what we call merchant generation. They sell their power to open market at market pricing. The Illinois Power Authority, which is run by the state of Illinois, buys power from them, and then they buy enough power to supply the utilities. We buy our power from the Illinois Power Authority.
Is that efficient?
It has worked out okay in the last few years because power prices are low, and so they have more flexibility to buy power on the open market at spot prices, and that has helped consumers in the last 4 to 5 years. I think the question is going to be what happens when power prices start to increase, and that's going to cause some challenges. But right now it's working fine.
But when I was talking about the tensions between, there is, in my opinion, this is my opinion
Right.
now, there is this desire in the American society now to rid itself of traditional methodologies of creating electric
Right.
generation, as in coal,
Right.
and move to something else. Mostly what we hear about is either solar
Right.
or wind. Less favorable is nuclear.
Right.
To me, what they're actually saying is let's give up something that works for something that hasn't been invented yet.
Right.
Okay, that's my opinion.
Okay.
And I've had many people sitting in your chair right there from the solar industry and from the wind industry who, oh, it's just 5 years away, whatever it is. It's always just
Yeah.
5 years. I don't care if I bring them back 5 years later, it's only 5 years
Right.
away. I don't know that the public really understands that what the political class seems to be talking about hasn't been invented yet, and that they're not going to be able to run their air conditioners with it 5, 10 years from now.
Yeah. Well, you know, it is challenging because, for example, the wind industry, you know, if you go through central Illinois, you'll see a lot of wind farms in that area, a lot of the big turbines. And they do provide, you know, electric, some electric, but we all know the wind doesn't blow all the time. And so you have to look at what your capacity is, and it's got to be there when you need it. Coal, gas, and nuclear are base load generation. They're there when you need it. So when you start bringing in renewable energy, whether it's solar or wind, you have to back it up with some type of base load. So when the wind's not blowing, you can turn on that gas generator to provide the electric that you need. That is an added cost. Most wind farms are located in areas that are not heavily populated. So you have to figure out how to get the electric that turbine is generated to the population centers. That means new transmission, which is also very costly to build new transmission lines. And then with solar, you have similar issues. You have solar that in the Midwest, you really don't have sun that shines all the time. So what do you do in the meantime? The storage capability of batteries, I think there's are still in the younger generation. It hasn't fully developed. They aren't as efficient as maybe they could be. Those are all challenges, and whenever you have those challenges, the cost for the consumer goes up considerably. And right now you have the federal government, sometimes utilities, sometimes the state government that subsidize these other forms of renewable energy, whether it's solar panels or wind farms. And if those subsidies aren't there, the cost goes up dramatically to the consumer. And so in a time, you have to manage what's the cost and what is the consumer willing to pay versus how much renewable energy they're looking at trying to have.
Who is paying the subsidies and who's getting the subsidy? Is that coming to you?
We don't receive the subsidies. We usually end up paying, we provide some subsidies and rebates to customers who use solar, and that is regulated by the state of Illinois. They demand that we do that. And so, federal government provides some subsidies to solar manufacturers, the companies who manufacture and install the panels, as well as companies that manufacture and install the windmills.
I'm trying to remember if back during the late 1800s, early 1900s, whether or not there was government money that was being put into the electric industry. I don't seem to recall that.
I don't think so. I think
that was all investors
Right.
just taking a chance.
Yeah,
Some of them won, some of them were
Right.
lost.
It was individual investors. You had a number of very small utilities in the late 1800s and 1900s, and they're all trying to establish themselves in the marketplace.
AC versus DC.
Right. That's very right. That's correct. And so what happened, many of those have gone by the wayside, and you have the larger ones. In Illinois, for example, Ameren Illinois Company is made up of 4 legacy companies. Each of those legacy companies are over 100 years old. You have, Silco, which was up in Peoria area. You had CIP, Central Illinois Public Service, which is in Springfield. And then you had the Illinois Power Company, which many of us in Madison, St. Clair County had as our utility company, which was out of Decatur. And then in the Alton, East St. Louis area, you had Union Electric. All 4 of those companies now are merged into Ameren Illinois. So,
Isn't there a co-op that's like just...
Yeah, and then there's co-ops also. Southwest Electric,
yes.
Yeah. And the co-ops, they actually operate under different regulations and principles than the investor-owned utilities. They don't have to answer to the Public Service Commission, and
but they just distribute, right? They're not generating anything. They're not transmitting anything.
Most of them are only distributing. There are some co-ops around the country that own generation, and some of them actually invest in some of the larger power plants. So they do have some ownership rights.
I see. So, Ameren Illinois, you're not just in the electric business, you're also in the gas distribution business as well.
That's correct.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that aspect of your business as well? Well,
Ameren Illinois, many people don't realize it, but we're about the 22nd largest gas distribution company in the United States. We have 806,000 natural gas customers throughout the service territory in Illinois, and we provide and distribute natural gas. We have 12 natural gas storage fields that we own and operate, where we, when the demand is low, we buy natural gas on the open market. We pump it into storage fields underground, and then
it's like big hole, like an old coal mine or something, or is it like a tank?
No, they're not tanks. It's basically limestone filled. It's pumped into limestone.
So it's just a cavern.
It's a cavern,
really?
Right? And then it's extracted when we need it. And but we like during the summer we'll buy extra. We'll fill our storage units, and so if it's a cold winter, we'll able to use our reserve supplies. And at the same time, it helps us hedge against the fluctuations or volatility in pricing, because we'll buy new every year. We buy and replenish all of our storage fields. So sometimes you're buying natural gas at a low price. The next year it may be a little bit higher price, but on average it smooths out that volatility for the customers. So we have like I said, a very large natural gas business. We're looking at making major infrastructure upgrades to that business also in the next 10 years. We're going to be putting in automated systems. You may have read about some of the accidents that have occurred around the country where maybe someone has hit a gas main or something and it causes a fire or an explosion. We're looking at the latest technology that would provide automatic remote cutoffs. So instead of dispatching someone to that scene to try to disconnect or stop gas flow, we'll be able to manage some of that in certain areas remotely by just using a computer, cutting off the gas flow, which then eliminates the hazard. So we're going to be upgrading that system, putting in a lot of new underground pipe, replacing it, as well as providing automated metering to our customers that will give them more reliable and accurate service also.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned computerizing. You're doing both of that in gas and electric, right? So
That's
that you can act faster. There was an issue that occurred August of '03.
Okay.
Where power failed in a huge portion of the Northeast plus
Right.
up into Canada.
Right.
Which set in motion a whole series of congressional hearings,
Right.
which eventually led people to talk about better control.
Right.
What progress has the industry made since this event in '03?
Right. Well, that event was really initially triggered by trees. Trees fell on
Here we go with trees again.
Yeah, trees. I mean, that was
Get you every time.
That was a big problem. But what happened was trees fell across some transmission lines
In Ohio. Right.
They knocked out the power coming from a substation, which ultimately caused the power plant that was providing the power to trip and go offline, and then you had a cascading effect of just unregulated electric, high voltage electric going through these lines, and if it's not regulated and balanced as those power plants trip off, the energy, the voltage going through those lines will basically just tear the lines down itself. You've seen where a car hits a pole, the line falls on the ground, and it jumps around and wiggles. Well, when you don't have that regulated flow of electric, that's what happens. The energy going through that wire will just cause it to cause waving, and that'll basically tear the lines off the poles eventually if it goes. And what happened, you had that cascade across the entire northeast portion of the country, and that's what caused that massive power outage.
Yeah, let's see. Now, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York,
right,
Ontario.
That's right.
And I think parts of Quebec as well.
In the Midwest, we're fortunate that we do have a Midwest system that is pretty automated, where we can I remember being in our down in our control center when that happened. It was a very hot summer day, and we were kind of watching the load for Illinois and Missouri, and you could actually see the other parts of the country when that load started dropping, and that meant that the power plants were basically tripping or going offline. And so fortunately, in the Midwest, we do have good communication, we have a good system, and we're able to monitor that and communicate with each other to prevent that from happening. So, you have that on a regional scale, but more usually you'll have issues like that occur more locally, or maybe it's statewide versus that multi-state type of event. Mm-hmm. But technology has changed dramatically, and it changes every day. I talked earlier about remote shutoffs on the gas system. That wasn't even thought of, 5 years ago. It wasn't heard of. Now, it's becoming a standard. So the technology is getting better and better. However, with technology are also new challenges, and the new challenges with the technology is privacy and cybersecurity.
I was just going to say that there's a lot of novels now in which bad guys are somehow getting control of electric utilities.
Right. And so that's one of the things that we spend a lot of time and effort and, quite frankly, money trying to
secure from your
protect our system. We think it's pretty secure. We test it regularly. Obviously, there's state and federal regulations on how safe your system is and what steps you take to protect it. But you know, the people who are out trying to do things to damage the system are always seeking and looking at new ways and coming up with new ideas. So it's a constant day-to-day battle to make sure that your system is safe and secure. And it's not accessed by hackers or terrorists or anyone that sometimes it's just just a disgruntled person that wants to reap havoc on a city. So we take extraordinary steps to make sure that doesn't happen.
Here in the last 3 minutes or so, what would Ameren Illinois like to accomplish over the next few years in terms of infrastructure improvements?
Yeah, well, we want to improve our electric grid to really build a 21st century infrastructure. You know, right now, for example, if everyone in your subdivision went out and bought an electric vehicle and came home after work at 5 o'clock and plugged it in, the most grids in the state and most grids in the U.S. could not support that in a residential neighborhood, you know, but that may be what the future holds. So how do we design a system today that can provide that much power for your neighborhood in 2030 or 2050? How do we do that? You know, 2050, you may have a battery the size of your hot water heater today that provides all the generation and electric service for your house, that, you know, you charge that battery, you run off of that battery. I mean, there's so many things that people are talking about. We have to devise a system today that's robust, but yet flexible enough to provide whatever needs you're going to have. Turn off your lights at one night, you're sitting at home, turn off your lights and then just look around your home and see how many red and blue dots that are appliances that are plugged in that are still running when your lights are out. Mm-hmm. Those are things that weren't on your system 5 years ago or 10 years ago and weren't even thought of 15 years ago. We don't know what those needs are going to be 20 years from now, 5 years from now. We have to build a system, and that's the challenge, but yet it's also the excitement. And we think that we'll be able to provide you know, a very reliable, robust system that will meet the needs of your children's children in 2050.
See, over the last, while you've been in the business, houses use a certain amount of electricity,
yes,
right?
Right.
It's been going up?
Yes.
And you see it continuing?
Right. You know, it continues to be, the demand and the usage continues to go up, and new appliances that are coming in. The good news is some of the older appliances, as they're replaced, are more energy efficient, yes, and that helps the consumer. But the demands are still there, and they just keep growing. So, you know, one of the big challenges, I think, would be, you know, totally full electric plug-in vehicles. That could be a challenge, but yet it could be a great opportunity also, because we'll have two-way metering. You'll be able to, we'll be able to tell you the price of electric every 15 minutes, and you can adjust your lifestyle in your home to, based on what the price of electric is during that hour.
Yeah, that was something I alluded to, and we're just about out of time here. I alluded to that at the opening, that, that pricing of electricity may not be like it has been in the past, just fixed. And so, you know, it's like so many cents per kilowatt hour. It won't be that. It's like so many cents now.
That's right.
We're out of time. Thank you very much for being with us.
You.
To my audience, I've been speaking with Richard Mark from Ameren, Illinois. This show is going to be on YouTube. Make sure, if you want other people to see it, show it to them. Thanks. Bye.